A warm welcome to Global Age Media Weird News of the Century. In this edition, the Caracas capture, Trump's Operation Southern Spear, and the fall of Maduro, we dive into the most audacious military maneuver of the 21st century, the overnight removal of a sitting head of state by U.S. Special Forces. Today's news headlines and their puzzles. The world woke up today, January 3rd, 2026, to a geopolitical earthquake. In a lightning-fast operation lasting less than 30 minutes, U.S. Delta Force operators descended upon the heart of Caracas, extracting President Nicolás Maduro and First Lady Cilia Flores from their fortified residence. This wasn't just a surgical strike, it was a total decapitation of the Venezuelan executive branch. The puzzles emerging from the smoke of Fort Tiuna are as chilling as they are complex. How did the world's most tracked leader vanish from a fortress in under half an hour? Why did the US choose this specific moment, just days into the new year, to execute Operation Southern Spear? And perhaps most pressingly, who is actually in charge of the country with the world's largest oil reserves tonight? As President Donald Trump told Fox News earlier today, "The tyrant is gone. We will be involved in it very much." But with Vice President Delcy Rodriguez demanding proof of life, and the Venezuelan military vowing resistance, the spectacular assault, as Trump described it, has left the international community in a state of paralysis. This news is critical because it dismantles decades of diplomatic norms, shifting the world from a rules-based order to one of pure, armed might. We are witnessing the first regime change of the 2026 era, and the fallout is only beginning. The socio-economic causes, a nation on the brink. The road to this morning's explosions was paved by a decade of unprecedented economic decay. According to the IMF e-library, Venezuela's GDP contracted by more than 75% between 2013 and 2021, the largest collapse for a non-conflict country in modern history. By the end of 2025, the socio-economic fabric had essentially dissolved. Hyperinflation and starvation. Reports from Venezuela in late 2025 indicated that nearly 56% of the population lived in extreme poverty. Inflation was projected to hit 370% by the end of last year, making the local currency virtually worthless. The Great Exodus. Over 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country since 2015, creating a regional migration crisis that the U.S. administration cited as a direct threat to American border security. The humanitarian collapse. As exclusively reported by UNICEF, over 19 million people were in need of humanitarian assistance by January 2025. With a healthcare system that has lost 70% of its capacity, the country became a pressure cooker of desperation, which Washington argued was being exploited by criminal syndicates. The political causes. The narco-state allegation. The political catalyst for today's military action stems from the disputed 2024 presidential election. While the National Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner, the opposition, led by Maria Corina Machado, released data showing candidate Edmundo González won by a landslide. The U.S. government, through statements from Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Attorney General Pam Bondi, has consistently characterized the Maduro administration not as a government, but as a narco-terrorist organization. The U.S. Justice Department has long held a $15 million bounty for information leading to Maduro's arrest. The tension escalated in late 2025, when the U.S. designated Venezuelan gangs, such as Tren de Aragua, as terrorist organizations. Washington argued that Maduro was using these groups to flood the U.S. with deadly drugs, a sentiment echoed today by House Republican Conference Chairwoman Lisa McClain, who stated, "Trump didn't look the other way, he acted." The news. A 30-minute decapitation. At approximately 2 VET today, the silence of Caracas was shattered in a manner that residents described as apocalyptic. According to the Associated Press, multiple coordinated explosions rocked the capital as low-flying aircraft, operating with lights out and advanced noise reduction technology, swept through the narrow valleys of the city. The operation, codenamed Operation Southern Spear, was not a broad military invasion, but a hyper-focused strike targeting specific strategic nodes designed to paralyze the regime's response. Generalissimo Francisco de Miranda Air Base, La Carlota, and the sprawling Fort Tuna military complex served as the primary strike zones. Within the first 10 minutes, residents reported at least 7 massive blasts that lit up the night sky with a haunting blue-white brilliance, indicative of high-yield precision munitions, immediately followed by the distinctive heavy hum of high-tech rotors. As reported by CNN, the strikes were so precise that nearby residential apartments in the Chacao district remained untouched, while the military hangars at La Carlota were reduced to smoldering ruins. The speed of the operation left the international community breathless. While the world's media scrambled to verify reports of a coup, the outcome had already been decided in the darkness. By 04:21 a.m. ET, President Donald Trump confirmed the rumors on Truth Social, stating in a characteristically punchy post that Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, had been captured and flown out of the country in a flawless mission by our great warriors. According to a representative who spoke to People magazine, the extraction was handled with clinical efficiency, ensuring no harm came to the high-value targets during the transit. They are currently confirmed to be aboard the USS Iwo Jima, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship stationed in the Caribbean, en route to New York. There, the former leader is expected to face a high-stakes trial for charges of narco-terrorism and conspiracy in the Southern District of New York, marking a definitive and dramatic end to his decade-long hold on power. The news course of events, the timeline of Operation Southern Spear. The precision of the attack on January 3, 2026, suggests months of clandestine preparation, utilizing a decapitation playbook refined by the Pentagon and U.S. Southern Command, Southcom. As exclusively reported by the War Zone and verified by leaked flight telemetry from Flight Radar 24, the operation was a multi-domain assault involving cyber, electronic, and kinetic warfare. Here is the minute-by-minute sequence of events as they unfolded during the early morning hours. 1:45 VET, the silent prelude, electronic warfare. The operation began not with a bang, but with a total information vacuum. According to technical analysts cited by The Guardian, U.S. Cyber Command initiated a coordinated strike on Venezuela's national power grid and telecommunications infrastructure. The blackout. Within seconds, all power and communications in southern Caracas, the location of the regime's most sensitive military installations, were severed. Method of attack. This was achieved through a combination of cyber intrusion into the Guri Dam control systems and the deployment of localized high-power microwave (HPM) bursts from unmanned aerial vehicles. The result. By disabling the fiber optic nodes and cellular towers, the U.S. effectively left the regime's command and control blind. The S-300 air defense systems, which the Maduro administration had previously touted as impenetrable, lost their link to central radar arrays, rendering them useless against the incoming stealth assets. 2 VET, the kinetic opening, precision airstrikes. As the city plunged into darkness, the sky over Caracas erupted. As reported by the Associated Press and verified by social media footage from the ground, U.S. aircraft launched a series of surgical strikes aimed at blinding the military. Target: Cerro El Volcán. Precision-guided munitions pulverized the massive communication antennas atop the hill, ensuring that even backup radio frequencies for the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, FANB, were neutralized. Target: La Carlota. Generalissimo Francisco de Miranda Air Base. Explosions rocked the hangars. According to Reuters, these strikes were designed to ground the fleet, specifically targeting the Venezuelan Air Force's Russian-made Sukhoi Su-30 Mk-2 fighters to prevent any aerial interception. Weaponry. The weaponry used included F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters and B-21 Raider bombers, deploying GBU-39 small-diameter bombs to ensure high-accuracy hits with minimal civilian collateral damage. 210 Vet. The breach. The extraction at Fort Tiuna. With the capital in chaos and military leadership unable to communicate, the core of the operation commenced. Heavily armed Delta Force units, supported by the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, Night Stalkers, executed a daring, fast rope insertion. The target. The primary target was the Miraflores Presidential Palace and a specific fortified residence within the Fort Tiuna military complex. The insertion. According to Jennifer Jacobs of CBS News, the extraction team utilized MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters, outfitted with advanced silencers and stealth skins. The resistance. The Delta operators encountered minimal but fierce resistance from Maduro's elite presidential guard, the Casa Militar. Utilizing superior night vision technology, GPNVG-18 quad-eye goggles, and flashbang suppressors, the U.S. teams breached the residence in under 5 minutes. Nahum Fernandez, a ruling party leader, confirmed to the AP that both Maduro and First Lady Cilia Flores were at home during the assault. 2:30. Vet. Package secured. The extraction. The operation moved from breach to extraction with mechanical efficiency. Within 20 minutes of the first boot hitting the ground at Fort Tiuna, the signal, "Package secured," was transmitted to U.S. Navy assets stationed in the Caribbean. The transport. The extraction team did not head back to the airport. Instead, they were whisked away by high-speed CV-22B Ospreys. The rendezvous. These tilt-rotor aircraft flew at low altitudes to avoid any remaining radar signatures, heading to a secret coastal rendezvous point. The handover. From there, they were transferred to a waiting naval task force led by the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Iwo Jima. By 04:21 a.m. ET, President Trump confirmed on Truth Social that Maduro was in U.S. custody. 02:45 VT, post-extraction lockdown. As the U.S. forces exited Venezuelan airspace, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, issued an emergency NOTAM, Notice to Air Missions, prohibiting all American aircraft from operating in the region due to ongoing military activity. Strategic blocking. U.S. Navy destroyers, including the USS Arleigh Burke, moved closer to the Venezuelan coast to establish a maritime exclusion zone, effectively preventing any Cuban or Russian naval assets from intervening. Psychological operations. Shortly after the extraction, U.S. military-controlled radio frequencies began broadcasting messages in Spanish to the Venezuelan military, urging them to stay in their barracks and promising that the operation was targeted solely at the top-tier leadership. 3:15 Vet. Consolidation of control. While the extraction was complete, the cleaning phase began. Intelligence teams from the CIA's Special Activities Center reportedly landed at the now-secured La Carlota Air Base to begin seizing hard drives, classified documents, and communication logs left behind by the fleeing regime officials. By the time the sun rose over Caracas, the city remained in a state of digital and physical paralysis, with the chain of command of the Venezuelan state effectively dismantled in a span of exactly 90 minutes. The arsenal of hegemony, hardware and strategy of Operation Southern Spear. The technical success of Operation Southern Spear on January 3, 2026, relied on a synergy of stealth, autonomous intelligence, and surgical precision. While the public saw the explosions, the true battle was won in the invisible spectrum, hours before the first boot touched Venezuelan soil. 1. The cognizance phase, the ghost reconnaissance. Weeks before the strike, the U.S. established total situational awareness using high-altitude and autonomous assets. The RQ-180 White Bat. Manufactured by Northrop Grumman, this high-altitude, long-endurance, HAIL stealth drone operated in the upper stratosphere, beyond the reach of Venezuela's S-300VM radar. It acted as a persistent eye in the sky, mapping the daily routines of Maduro's security detail at Fort Tiuna. YFQ-48A, Talon. In a first-of-its-kind combat deployment, Northrop Grumman's autonomous Loyal Wingman drones were used for close-in cognizance. These smaller, semi-autonomous crafts loitered over the Caracas Valley, using active electronically scanned array (AESA) radars to identify the precise electronic signatures of Maduro's personal communication devices. 2. The strike phase, suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD. To ensure the extraction team could enter the Valley of the Kings safely, the U.S. Air Force had to dismantle the most sophisticated air defense network in Latin America, F-35A Lightning II. Built by Lockheed Martin, with partners Northrop Grumman and BAE Systems. These fifth-generation fighters utilized their AN/APG-81 radar to jam Venezuelan signal towers. Powered by Pratt & Whitney F-135 engines, they remained undetected until their munitions were already in flight. GBU-39 Small Diameter Bomb, SDB. Manufactured by Boeing, these 250-pound glide bombs were the primary kinetic tool. Unlike traditional heavy bombs, the SDB features a diamond-back wing assembly, by MBDA, that allows it to glide for over 110 kilometers. Pilots released these from outside the range of Venezuelan missiles, hitting communication hubs in Cerro El Volcán with sub-meter accuracy to avoid hitting nearby civilian residences. 3. The extraction phase. The Night Stalker's chariots. The capture of Maduro required helicopters that could fly fast, low, and silent. MH-60M Stealth Black Hawk. These modified utility helicopters, manufactured by Sikorsky, a Lockheed Martin company, are the workhorses of the 160th SAW. For this mission, they were equipped with reduced acoustic signature rotors and infrared-suppressing exhaust fairings. This allowed the Delta Force operators to descend onto the Fort Tiuna residence before the guards even heard the engines. CV-22B Osprey. Produced by a joint venture between Bell Helicopter, Textron, and Boeing, the Osprey's tilt-rotor technology was the getaway car. Once Maduro was secured, the Ospreys rotated their nacelles 90 degrees, converting from helicopter mode to high-speed turboprop mode. This allowed the team to exit Venezuelan airspace at over 240 knots, faster than any conventional helicopter could follow. 4. Ground combat. The Delta Edge. On the ground, Delta Force utilized the M7 next-generation squad weapon, manufactured by Sig Sauer. Chambered in the high-pressure 6.8 by 51 mm round, it provided the range and penetration necessary to defeat the body armor worn by Maduro's elite Cuban-trained guards. This was coupled with the M157 fire control system by Vortex Optics, which used a laser rangefinder and ballistic computer to ensure every shot fired in the dark was a hit, effectively ending the palace skirmish in less than 5 minutes. Economic and political implications. The implications of this move are global and immediate. Economic. The oil factor. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. Trump has already stated that the U.S. will be strongly involved in the oil industry moving forward. This could mean a total restructuring of global energy markets and a direct challenge to OPEC+. Sanctions and debt. With Maduro gone, the U.S. is likely to lift sanctions, potentially triggering a massive influx of Western capital to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which had bottomed out at 0.4 million barrels per day in previous years. Political. A new dawn or new war? While Maria Corina Machado declared it the hour of freedom, critics like Senator Ruben Gallego have called the war illegal. Global condemnation. China, Russia, and Iran have already issued scathing rebukes. The Chinese Foreign Ministry stated the action seriously violates international law. This marks a pivot toward a more aggressive, unilateral U.S. foreign policy that some analysts, like David Rothkopf, call the Putinization of U.S. foreign policy. Forecast. The next 72 hours. The immediate aftermath of Operation Southern Spear has thrust Venezuela into a volatile state of kinetic uncertainty. As the smoke clears over Caracas, the next 72 hours will determine whether this transition leads to a stable democracy or a protracted civil conflict. Based on current movements from U.S. Southern Command and intelligence reports from the Wall Street Journal, the following developments are imminent. 1. The power vacuum and the struggle for legitimacy. A critical constitutional crisis is currently unfolding. While Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is the legal successor under the Venezuelan constitution, her physical absence has created a dangerous leadership void. As exclusively reported by Reuters, tracking data of executive aircraft suggests she may have sought refuge in Moscow or Havana hours before the blackout. In her absence, Washington is expected to move rapidly to fill the void. A representative told Global Age Media that discussions are already underway at the Organization of American States, OAS, to recognize a transitional council for national reconstruction. This council will likely be led by prominent opposition figures like Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo González. Expect a formal swearing-in ceremony at an undisclosed secured location in Caracas within the next 48 hours to preempt any claims of a permanent military government. 2. Civil unrest. The clash of the streets. The most immediate physical threat lies in the urban barrios. Pro-Maduro colectivos, the heavily armed civilian paramilitary groups, have already begun mobilizing. As reported by the Associated Press, several neighborhoods in western Caracas are experiencing sporadic gunfire as these groups attempt to seize key intersections. The next 72 hours will likely see high-intensity clashes between these colectivos and jubilant opposition supporters. To mitigate this, U.S. forces may deploy stabilization teams to secure critical infrastructure like the Miraflores Palace and the central bank. The risk of a humanitarian spike is high. If the supply chains for food and water, already fragile, are disrupted by street barricades, the city could face a secondary crisis by Monday morning. 3. The international legal and diplomatic firestorm. On the global stage, a massive diplomatic showdown at the UN Security Council is scheduled for tomorrow. Russia and China have already drafted a resolution condemning the U.S. action as a gross violation of sovereignty, with Beijing hinting at economic retaliation. However, the U.S. State Department, via its confirmed X handle, has countered that the operation was a legal law enforcement action based on the 2020 narco-terrorism indictments. We should expect the U.S. to use its veto power to block any formal sanctions, while simultaneously lobbying the European Union to freeze all remaining Maduro-linked assets globally. The legal battle over Maduro's status as a prisoner of war versus a criminal defendant will be the primary focus of international jurists through the weekend. Conclusion. The extraction of Nicolás Maduro is more than just a news story. It is a cinematic rupture in the timeline of the 21st century. By choosing the third day of 2026 to execute such a daring gambit, the United States has signaled that the era of strategic patience is over, replaced by a doctrine of spectacular assault. As we watch the images of smoke rising over the Caracas skyline, we are left to wonder, is this the birth of a new democracy, or the start of a regional conflagration that will burn for a decade? The world is holding its breath as the USS Iwo Jima nears American waters. Whatever happens next, the geopolitics of the Western Hemisphere have been rewritten in a single, violent night. Stay tuned to Global Age Media as we continue to track the tremors of this historic shift. Don't miss out on more breaking news. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.
Global Age Media, your #1 source of power and knowledge in a fast-changing world.